Another episode 42 of the 40 Athletes podcast. Jimmy, it's school time again, man. And that means sports are starting up, colleges are back in session. Today we have the Ted Lasso of tennis on.
Yeah, you know what? And by the way, speaking of tennis, I'm excited about this because when I was a kid, I used to ride my bike to the tennis courts with my buddies. And I don't know if I ever told you, but I won the Ridgeview Open. We used to have the Ridgeview Open.
Oh, okay.
I won that back in the day. And I had a heck of a serve. I need to talk to Coach because my back, I couldn't get the backhand. I couldn't get that right. Yeah. Forehand, I was good. But they started figuring that out, and I had to stop playing tennis. I think when I was 12 years old, I stopped. So if I had Coach Young in my life, you never know. I mean,
I could have been in the U.S. Open for all we know. I mean, with that lefty, gosh, dang, that serve, whoo,
yeah,
man. Well,
we all need a Ted Lasso of tennis. So this is going to be good.
We got him. Chris Young is the director of tennis at Oklahoma State. He's the head women's coach. And in 2016, he was unanimously chosen as the Big 12 Coach of the Year. His big thing, though, is building champions in and out of the sport of tennis, not just within it. So, again.
Hey, by the way, and the reason you say Ted Lasso coached football at Wichita State.
He did.
So Chris Young, if you don't know, he coached tennis at Wichita State, and he took that tennis program. They weren't very good, and they were like in top 20, selling out crowds. So him and Ted have something in common, Wichita State Shockers.
And I would imagine, too, that even though Chris isn't coaching soccer in England, he might have some former tennis players in England.
Well, he might. The thing about Ted, he might actually – somebody might hire him as a football coach, going from tennis to football, basketball. He could probably go do that and succeed as well.
Maybe resurrect the Wichita State football
Let's get him on and figure this thing out.
Okay, all right, here we go. Coach Young, how you doing today, man?
Good. Hey, I think I'm taking you guys to my next contract negotiations. I think you guys can set me up very well.
Well, you know what? We can talk about that later. But yeah, we would definitely help you with that.
And James, I'm fired up. A lefty in the game of tennis is always a key. So I mean, you got something that most people would love to have. So
Coach, I couldn't get my second serve right.
Yeah, well,
my first serve, I tried to get that power.
Yeah.
The second serve finesse, I struggled. I'm going to tell my backhand, they figured it out. They started going my backhand, and I was just like, hit that backhand. I couldn't get it over the top going. And I went from the Ridgeview Wimbledon, like Ridgeview Open, so I couldn't win anything.
No, man.
We can solve that. Well, like later time.
Hey, Chris, I know you're a big guy into developing a great culture. So let's start with that. What are the keys in building a program? And I know it takes time. So if you're somebody starting off, you want to build the right culture for your program, what are some keys that you would suggest that people starting off, what would you prioritize?
Well, I think you need to know what you want to build first. A lot of people say, I want to have a great culture, but they don't really understand what they stand for or the values they want their culture to be around. So I think each person just needs to, first of all, identify what are the values that are important to you. If you want to have a culture that is set around certain values, then, identify your own self, look within and say, here's the keys that I think are really important to me in my life and who I am. And this is what I want to pass on to other people. And a lot of coaches, they have great intentions, but they haven't really sat down and look at what do I want to pass on? What do I think is really important? I know what a good culture looks like when I see it. All of us know what a good culture looks like. We see a team on the court. We see them interacting. We see what a good culture looks like when we see it. But how do we get there? I think, first of all, it starts with understanding who you are. I think as a coach, you can't try to be somebody that you're not. So you have to understand the priorities, the values, the characteristics that are important to me. And then once you kind of identify those things, I think you have to be very intentional each and every day with using those, talking about those, and making those, key phrases, points, teaching moments that you can see. There's always opportunities to be able to teach and instill the characteristics of your culture if you're looking for it. And when those things are on your brain, on your mind, they're what you're really all about, and you're focused on those, you're going to be finding those moments throughout the day, throughout the practice, throughout the time you're engaging with the athletes to point to, okay, this is what I'm talking about. This is what X, Y, or Z looks like.
And Chris, like you went into Wichita State in Oklahoma State, and they didn't, what I've read, they didn't have the success that you probably desired to have or wanted to see that people see today. So building that culture, take me back to, Coach Young walking into Wichita State, walking into Oklahoma State, and you say you have to know what it is you want. What did it look like? What was your idea of like the characteristics and the values that your programs were going to have?
Yeah, it's funny, James. I talked to a young coach called me yesterday that just got his first D1 head coaching job, and he asked me the same question. I'm just starting off. What does this look like? And for me, I think the biggest thing that I wanted to instill is a belief. A lot of times you go into these programs and they haven't had success and they don't know what that looks like. And a lot of times those kids have become I wouldn't say satisfied, but they've accepting of their place, their role in the whole spectrum of what college athletics looks like. And at Wichita State, in tennis, we have a ranking system that goes to the top 75. And at the time, the top 75 was published. And Wichita State had never been ranked in the top 75. And so you have 340 plus Division I women's programs, but you've never been in the top 75. So we're not talking top 25, we're talking top 75. And so, those kids just didn't understand what that looked like. And so first of all, I think you have to sell them on a vision of, belief and, just a confidence level and build their confidence level of, okay, this is a vision. This is what we're going to get to. And I think part of coaching, and you go to, you were kind of joking about Ted Lasso, but when you watch that, the greatest thing is getting people to believe in something bigger than they ever thought. I think that's what I've always wanted to do in programs is go there and draw out in players something in themselves that they just didn't think was possible. I think that's the greatest thing that you can do in coaching is give kids a belief system. And through that, comes discipline, comes hard work, comes a lot of the values and cultures that create a good chemistry and a culture. And so when I got to Wichita State, there was 10 teams in the Missouri Valley Conference, and the year before they had tied for 6th and, pretty much 7th place team in the league. And I'm like, we have the talent, the ability, the resources to win a conference championship, but that's not going to happen necessarily in year one, but you got to start talking about it, right? Because the things that you think about, the things that you talk about, the things that you dream about, that's what you're going to become. You can't just become something that you don't think about, you don't intentionally spend time working on. A lot of people want to become champions, but they don't allow themselves to think that way. And a great example is, Jason mentioned in my bio the year 2016. That's the year that our team played for the national championship at Oklahoma State. We lost on the final match to Stanford. Actually had a match point for winning the national championship. And you go back to March of that year, we lost a match at USC, and it was kind of the turning point for our team. And we had a conversation with the team afterwards. And what had happened leading up to that time was that group didn't want to set team goals. They didn't want to, have certain expectations. And as we drilled down to that, they didn't want to set themselves up for failure. They didn't want to have goals too big that when they achieved, they felt they were letting themselves down. And so I played along with it that year. I thought the team was really talented. And so I kind of played along with that mindset for a little bit of time because I wanted them to see where that line of thinking was going to get them. I could just stop them and I could steer them in the direction that I wanted them to go. But I didn't think it was going to quite have the effect that I wanted it to have because I was going to be pushing them in a direction they weren't fully bought into. So we kind of let it play out halfway through the season. And then we lose this match to USC, didn't play well, had about a 45-minute discussion right there at the court after the match. And I said, okay, I've let you guys do this, kind of aimlessly walk through the season, halfway through the season, and look where we are. We're halfway through the season. We're nowhere where we think we should be or want to be. Not that losing to USC was a bad loss. With just the way that we played, the direction things were going. Okay, so for us, we've got 18 matches left or whatever it was in the season. For us to finish the way it is, we got to be very intentional. We got to talk about it, and we got to put some expectations out there and demand ourselves to to execute, to live, to train at a higher standard. And so we started talking about what that looked like. Girls started having conversations with each other. We won the next 18 matches in a row and didn't lose till we lost in the finals. And I use that as an example because a lot of times people, whether it's in life or it's building a culture or it's building a team, they're afraid to put things out there that they feel like are unachievable, unattainable. We kind of settle for, okay, these are what my goals are because I'm comfortable knowing that I can achieve these, right? And if I put something out there, that's maybe like a pipe dream. That's a little bit too big for me. And so I think that a lot of times that's why people have just a certain level of success because that's all they expect of themselves. And so as a coach, I think you have to come into that environment, whether it was Wichita State or talking about now at Oklahoma State, and you have to get them to see that having big dreams and big goals is not only possible, but it's the expectation of being here and being part of this program. And okay, we're going to have this, and you've never thought it's possible because maybe you've never done the things that make that possible.
Well, and Chris, whenever you have big dreams, you're gonna fail, right?
Nope.
It's gonna happen. And I think our society, and me included, like going through school, I was scared to fail, like for whatever reason, like. And so I think having big goals helps you learn that failure is actually okay. And it's actually going to help you move forward because that's how you grow, like getting uncomfortable, like failing, but you rep it out to get better and better. So how do you instill like this belief of big goals and helping them be okay with failing as long as they're growing from it?
Jason, that's a great point. No one's okay with failing. I think that it's probably that's the most difficult thing in life. I don't know if anybody ever gets to the point that you're okay with that, but I think that's where as a coach, how you react to failure becomes how your kids are going to be able to see a model, an example of what failure looks like. If every time they miss a shot or they do something, I'm, like overreacting, which I did, early in my career, there was times like, how did they miss that shot? And you learn that you can't be so up and down with, emotional control, emotional intelligence, discipline kind of, takes a big part of that. I just think as a coach, you have to model what excellence looks like. Someone told me once in a conference that as coaches, we are messengers of excellence. And I think that is so true. As a coach, you model what the standard of excellence looks like. And part of that is how you deal when things don't go your way, because to be successful, to be excellent at something, you have to work through adversity, failure. And I think that's so important. And, how you respond to that is going to be critical to your success level of overcoming those situations. And as a coach, I think that's the most important thing that we can do is help them navigate and give them tools to handle when failure comes. And, if we're always down their throat, if we're always jumping on them every time they fail, then what's going to happen? Their fear of failure is going to grow. And so what you have to do is you have to lessen their fear of failure. And how you do that as a coach is you have to model it. You have to talk about it. And as you guys have both alluded to, I think that's the biggest challenge in life and in building a culture and in building a team as an athlete is, failure is all part of it. And the reason why a lot of people aren't successful to the level they want is they don't want to go through the difficult moments that failure, gives you and, push through it and find what's on the other side.
Chris, you brought up a bunch of great points. I want to dive into some of these. One is this. I do believe people talk about leadership, and I think leaders, the great leaders, people say is a boss, is a captain, or somebody a leader, and I don't think so. I think leaders are individuals that are able to take people where they don't think they can even go, right? And I think that's what you're talking about. My question is this, is like, so you get these individuals saying, we're going here, and they never been there before, and they maybe haven't had success, right? And they doubt it, but they start to maybe believe it a little bit. They get in it, and then maybe start losing or not having success. And, that inner critic starts coming in, the doubting, right? So you're not good enough. You can't do this. What do you think about? What do you do as a coach and tell coaches when they're going through challenges like that to keep individuals to buy in, to believe that we can do this? and these are learning experiences. What are some suggestions you can give to coaches to help them maintain that belief and that inner critic of some of these athletes are starting to think, this isn't working?
James, that's a great point. And I think one of the things that we talk about with our team is you have to be very intentional to have these conversations at times other than in the heat of the moment. So one of the things that we do with our team is we try to be very intentional about building our culture and our team and educating our players all throughout the year. So we'll take time on a Monday of the week, and maybe it's just a 15-minute piece, but I give kids a notebook with our team, and the first set kind of has the standards and expectations of the program. The second section is, I'm big on always looking for resources to give them. So I may read an article or something like that talks about confidence, or it talks about failure, or it talks about mental barriers that we're trying to break through. And I'll just give that to them and let them kind of read through it. But the biggest thing is having these conversations in moments when the anxiety isn't as high, when everybody's kind of comfortable and relaxed, like the conversation that we're having right now. You start to talk about it. Okay, when these moments come, here's how we're going to handle it. Here's how we're going to handle failure. Here's how we're going to handle when we hit these speed bumps along the way. So in that moment, I can calmly go to the person and say, look, this is what we've talked about. We're prepared for this moment. We talked about how to handle it this way. And, sometimes it gives them a little bit of peace. Through those conversations, I think the most important thing is you develop trust. It's so important as a coach player that you develop that trust relationship. And that trust is deepened in the difficult moments, right? Everybody can be there for you and help you and be up and energetic and everything when the moments are good. But you need those moments when the players are going through difficult times that you really dig deep in the trenches and help them. And that's where you do it. And I think coaches themselves are afraid, kind of going back to Jason's point, coaches themselves are afraid of failure. It's like all of us as young coaches realize that, we're judged on our success, right? And so everybody wants to prove themselves. And the way we feel we prove ourselves is by success. And so a lot of times, even coaches, early in your career, you want to avoid that failure because you're trying to make a statement yourself. And so you got to let go of, I'm not worried about what this is going to say about me. I'm going to be, more concerned about the growth of my athletes. And they see that as well. To your point, James, I think kids see when you're authentic. Kids see when you're being true to yourself. You can't be, not everybody can be Ted Lasso. He's got his own unique style of doing things. And if everybody tries to create that style, it's not going to work because that's not them. And, I think what you see in that situation and what you see from coaches who are successful is they have their own spin, their own way of identifying with athletes. They have their own way of connecting with athletes, but that takes time, takes intention, and you have to work through it. And as you start to prepare the path for them, when they get off the path or things get rocky on the path, we can go back to things that we've already prepared. We can go back to things we've already had discussions about. So I think, James, to your point, just being very intentional. For young coaches, they're thinking, how am I going to do this? You got to lay the groundwork, prepare the path for them ahead of time. So when they fall off or things get a little bit tricky or they have these failure moments, it's easy to go revert back to conversations and things that you've already talked about, than trying to work through a problem in the heat of the moment that you've never really prepared or planned for. And I think that's probably what most people get the most in trouble with, is they become very reactionary coaches, and they're reacting to the moment that a problem goes wrong. And as a young coach, look, you probably haven't experienced a lot of it, so you are reacting for the first time. Okay, this has happened to me. Now I'm entering year 21 as a head coach, and I'm gonna not ever say that I've seen it all, because the minute that you do, you get hit with something. So I don't want to curse myself. Because, COVID showed us that there's always tricks around the corner, right? But as you start to see more things, you start to anticipate what challenges could be down the road, and you prepare for those. And not to say you spend a lot of time saying this and this and this is going to go wrong, and here's how we're going to handle it. But you start to kind of navigate through situations, and you start to give them the tools to handle it. And then they want to see that you're right there in the trenches with them. And sometimes, getting down and dirty as a coach isn't always the most fun, but it's necessary.
Well, you mentioned, like, you think about coaches, young coaches growing up and be coaches. What do they learn? Like, if it's a basketball coach, we learn what? X and O's, right? How to run practices and, teach defense, offense, whatever it is. And it could be football, similar. But I think, like, we think about the IQ, but we don't think much about the EQ, the emotional intelligence. As you said, you've been coached for 20 some years. And I know when I was a young coach, like, the pressure, the stress of winning and what people think about you and what your team's doing and how you look and can get to you, and you can be more reactive instead of responding in a positive way. What would you tell young coaches and coaches in general? How do you develop that EQ? Are there, like, different things they can maybe read, things they can, like, class they can take, or what they can do to help them in that area?
I think the hardest thing for us is people, and it goes especially as coaches, is to identify your weaknesses and be, like, truthful with yourself. For me, when I was a young coach, I was very emotional. And I had to stop and identify and think about why. Well, for me, I felt I had a lot to prove. You get certain opportunities earlier in your career, and you want to prove yourself. You want to show people that took a chance on you or whatever it is that they made the right decision. And so as a young coach, you're high when things are good and you're down when things are bad. And so you're very emotional. And what happens to that is, your players become very emotional. And, when they're having a good day, they have a good practice. When they're having a bad day, they have a bad practice. And your team's going to take on your identity. So if you're a very emotional coach, then your team's that way. And I started seeing, early in my career, my team was losing some of those tight matches. And why was it? Because they didn't want, the kids never want to let the coaches down. I don't care who they are. They're not going to want to let their coach down. And so when it gets in that tight moment and they see you over there and, you're tight gripped and everything with it, what's going to happen? They're going to be like, we got to win this one for coach. We got to win this one so coach can sleep tonight or whatever it is. And then, there's this emotional. So how do you develop that emotional intelligence? I think is a great point, James. And, what I tried to do is I tried to look at people who were successful. And I think it's what successful people can do is find people in your field who are successful that you see in them characteristics that you want to have in yourself, and just study those people, try to emulate what they do. Try to, read a lot. I started reading a lot from coaches who are doing things. There's a lot of obviously self-help books and all these things, but I wanted to read from coaches who were in there. What did they say? What did they do that helped them grow? I feel like I'm always a learner, so I try to get in front of people as much as possible. I love connecting with people and networking with people because I think you can learn something from everyone. So, I like learning from coaches in all fields, not just tennis, but just coaches in general. And over time, I think you have to just be very self-aware. And I think the more self-aware you are of areas that you can grow and focusing on those and being aware of how you're passing on maybe the things that, you struggle with. I don't want to pass those on to my players. So I want to work on them so they can see, growth in me. And, I think life also has a way of doing that. A lot of life experiences, things that happen to you. And, look, as a coach, you do it 20 something years. You've been coaching for a while. You guys have experienced it. You lose enough. You finally are like, okay, what's the worst thing that happened? I lost a match. I go home. I wake up the next day. I still got a job. They're not firing me after that one loss. And so, over time, I think time has a way of doing that. As young coaches, people say, well, I don't have time. I got to get it done now. And there's some truth to that. But I think overall, why are you doing it? What's your mission? What's your purpose? And you can't force things to happen. And, I think it's just all a process, and nothing replaces experience. That's the hard part for a young coach is, you want to get there fast, and nothing just replaces experience. And look, there's some things that young coaches are going to do better than me in year one because maybe they're not they haven't had the experiences that I've had. So maybe they're not jaded in some of the ways that I might be. So there's positive negatives in all situations. I think just learning more about yourself and becoming the better version of you can pass on to the athletes. I don't know if that is a great answer to your question.
You said you read. What was, if you could give coaches one book that helped you out to be strength your EQ, what would it be?
For me, to be honest, I've read a lot of the things that John Gordon's put out, and I kind of got in front of him and has spent a lot of time with him. And just the power of a positive leader and the power of a positive team, to me, I think allowed me to focus on being more intentional about the language that I use, the positivity that I bring. I had a tendency, I was always kind of a self-made player and coach, and somebody who I was always just very focused and very intense with what I did, focusing on bringing my best. And sometimes I was not aware of just the energy that I was portraying. And so, I think just the words, the actions, the environment you create, you want to create that positive environment. And, we've just did it last year with our team, and I think it has good impacts as the power of a positive team and just how that kind of affects. That was something that really, made a big impact on me for sure.
And it sounds like one thing I wanted to ask you on this is like the life skills and character development in your players. Is that something you prioritize with them, not just so much teaching tennis? Is that something that you are intentional about? You see that has a benefit in your program?
Most definitely. I think that's one of the things that I talk about in recruiting. We talk about with our players who want to develop the whole person. I think that it's very short-sighted of a coach and of me to just focus on the tennis development only, because there's so much more to the person than just being an athlete. And I think when you develop the whole person, it allows them not only to be a better person, but a better athlete. They develop more confidence in themselves. They think more about who they've been created to be and who they want to be. And I think that's so important. And so we spend a lot of time on the life skills component. I bring in different speakers to our team. At least once a month, we have a different speaker come in that has been successful in certain areas, and have them speak to the team about that. And I try to get a lot of people in front of our team, not just me, because, they hear that same voice all the time. It gets a little bit redundant. And there's a lot smarter people than me in a lot of these areas. So, I don't try to do it all myself, and I try to bring in people. But I think the kids know that that's very genuine in focusing on helping them to become better. And, we try to sit down each semester and focus on 3 to 5 areas of growth. And maybe 2 or 3 of those areas is on the court tennis development, and a couple of those is growth off the court. But if I can help you get 3 to 5 areas better per semester, by the end of your 4-year career, you've gotten better in 20 areas in your life and in your tennis development. It's great. The problem is most people try to solve everything at once, and you wind up not solving anything. And so, you got to be very specific. We call them areas of focus. And these are the areas we're going to focus on right now. And look, you may have 10 things that you want to get better at. But if we're trying to get better at 10 things, we're probably not getting better at any of them. So we're going to focus on 2 to 3 areas at a time. And as we do that over the course of time, you're going to see real growth in those areas. So the next time we sit down and we come up with our areas of focus, we're going to be more intentional and more bought in, because we see this is a path for growth.
Well, and Chris, I've heard you talk about like running your own race and not comparing yourself to other people. And you probably have players now that they've only really known the digital age. They didn't know anything before social media or anything before that. And I feel like a lot of our young adults have a problem with comparison. Like they see what somebody else has and they maybe feel down on themselves for maybe not being at the same place, or, seeing the highlight reels of other people on social media and thinking that their life is worse. So how do you help people understand like, hey, everything happens when it's supposed to, and to run your own race and not really compare yourself to others, but only compare yourself to like yourself in the past?
Well, Jason, that's easier said than done, isn't it? I mean, it's something that, if I'm honest, I struggle with as well. It's just that's life. The comparison game is a challenge for everybody, but running your own race is so important to me. And in our sport, on our team, everybody's going to come in and they want the quick fix and they want the easy path. And sometimes when you see somebody who maybe isn't in your minds working as hard as you, or maybe, you know, isn't as talented as you, and yet they kind of skip ahead in the process, or they're having success in certain ways. Or just as you mentioned, the digital media age, social media, you know, no one posts the struggles, they only post the highlights. And so when you're seeing everybody's highlights, you don't know the struggles or what that person's going through to get to the point, what they've overcome, or the challenge that they're facing. So, you know, as you mentioned, I think a big thing for us is running your own race and your own timeline and not comparing to other people. And can you get blinders on and that tunnel vision that allows you to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And when you're around a team, you're a part of a team, you know, our sport is such an interesting challenge to coach, because most kids chose to play tennis because they wanted to play an individual sport. They didn't want to be on a team sport. Oftentimes they wanted to kind of control their own destiny a little bit. And now for the first time, college tennis is a team sport, and we're competing as a team in an individual setting, so to speak. And so now they've maybe had their own private coach, their own trainers. They've had, you know, a lot of individual focus, and now they're sharing the focus. They're sharing, you know, situations in training with 7, 8 other people. And so now around them is everybody else. And now they're starting to compare on a daily basis what their training looks like, what their results look like. And so that's where running your own race becomes really important, because, you know, if you're on a team or not, you're going to be around people that are going to be doing the same thing that you're doing. And they're going to be having different varying levels of success and different things that are going to be happening to them. And, you know, a great quote that I heard from a guy, Craig Rochelle, does a lot of leadership stuff, said, comparison is the thief of joy. Mm-hmm. And I think that is so true, because it takes the whole joy out of doing what we're doing if we're always focusing on what someone else is doing. We can't focus on our own personal path. And, you know, I can't celebrate my success if I'm comparing it to the success of somebody else. And I think it's so important in the process for you to have growth. You have to celebrate the success. You have to celebrate the moments, because there's plenty of times we just spent 30 minutes talking about how to overcome adversity, basically, right? So there's plenty of adversity that we know that's going to happen in sports. And if we only focus on that, you don't celebrate the success, you're never going to enjoy the process. And the process is what makes us. So you have to be able to enjoy the process. And the way that you enjoy the process is celebrating those successes, celebrating those little moments. But if you're focusing on someone else's race and comparing yourself to someone else, you're probably never going to have success. You're never going to celebrate those moments, because it's maybe never good enough, because there's always going to be somebody better. No matter what you do in life, there's always going to be somebody better. And if you're comparing yourself to that, you're never going to have those moments. You can just be proud of yourself for what you've overcome.
So, Chris, you dove into something that I think is important that coaches need help with. You mentioned tennis, or it could be golf, that individuals come in and they're so used to playing individual, right? And now they got to be part of a team sport. Or it could be like we talked about Ted Lasso, Jamie Tart, you know, he's coming in, it's all about him. But a lot of times, you know, this, that parents and people that are, you know, taking care of individuals, the handlers, they're talking to these kids, telling them like, you need to do this, you need to do that. It's about you. How do you go about as a coach to get individuals to come in to buy in, to be like, hey, you're an individual, but we're coming together as a team for a common purpose. We're working together for each other. How do you do that?
Well, I think you got to be very intentional, James. I think you got to spend a lot of time one-on-one with that player, but then also, you know, get them in the group setting and talk about it. And I think when you get together and you talk about it as a group, everybody realizes that everybody's coming from a similar situation. You know, a lot of times in our team, they have a lot of parental pressure. They've been in an individual sport, and maybe the parents are the ones taking them every time to a tournament. Maybe some of their parents are trying to be their coach. And so, you know, a lot of times coaching a female sport, the fathers have such a dominant role on, you know, their past. And so a lot of the girls want to please their dads, and they want to be able to, you know, have success in that. And that's not always across the board, but you see it a lot. And so, you know, they're looking for that acceptance. And when they start to get in a room and they start to share it and someone's story kind of mimics theirs a little bit, then they start to find common ground. I think that's where you have to find some common ground with each other and work through it. The one thing that we impress upon them a lot is, look, you can do something on your own, but what happens when you have success and you have no one to share it with? Sometimes it can be just a little bit or a lot hollow. But the greatest moments in life is where you can achieve something and you can celebrate it and you have other people around you to celebrate with, a team that you know have put in the work together, and you celebrate. The greatest victories in your life are going to be when you have people to celebrate it with. And so trying to get people, the kids to buy into that we're going to do something together. And you can always accomplish things greater when you have a team of people around you, because, it's like going out, and if I go out and run the 100-yard dash, I'm not a very fast guy anyway, but if I do it by myself, my time's not going to be great. But, the three of us go out there and run it. I guarantee you we're going to run faster, because we're going to push each other, and none of us are going to want to be the third guy to come in. And if we do, the next time we're going to run it again. And, I'm going to try to one up one of you guys. Right. And if we come to that mindset every single day, what's going to happen? Our levels are going to rise. And so no one gets to the top by themselves. I think, just impressing upon that no one gets to the top by themselves, and you need a team of people around you. Enjoy that moment, celebrate with those people. And it goes back to running your own race. The last question we just talked about, look, we're going to all help each other. We're going to celebrate each other. We're going to work together. And through that, we're all going to raise the level of each other.
How do you help your athletes? You mentioned like some of them, you're coaching women's tennis, and a lot of the fathers have basically, coached them or guided them, and they want to so much please their parents, right? Their father. And there's pressure when you're in athletics to perform, especially like in tennis, when maybe you're doing individual tennis and the pressure for you to hit the serve or to score the point or whatever it is. And you talked about mindset. What do you do in Oklahoma State program to help your players with the mindset, to be present, to not chase mistakes, and to be able to play at the peak of their abilities?
Yeah, I think it's just something you have to practice. I think a lot of times we don't practice the mental side of things. So you got to have routines. There's certain routines that each player needs to be able to have that keeps them present mentally. In tennis, maybe it's going to your strings, and it's maybe just, opening the face of the racket, looking at your strings and mentally giving you a picture there of like, okay, I'm replaying the match and I'm giving myself a visual of I'm going there. Maybe some players go to the towel, maybe you lose 2 points in a row. You have a discipline of, okay, I lose 2 points in a row. I've got to go to the towel. I've got to pick up the towel. I've got to wipe off a little bit. I've got to allow myself mentally to reset. Maybe a player goes back and just taps the fence at a certain time before a big point, allows their mind to reset. There's got to be some way to flush out the negative and reset the mind towards the positive. And that's just a routine. There has to be certain routines and rituals that you have. In our sport, it's about repetition. Our sport's about, you develop the forehand, or James, we're going to develop your backhand by repetition, right? So you got to do it over and over again. And if you get that routine of doing it the right way, they say it takes 10,000 repetitions to develop a shot in the sport. And so you have to do that mentally as well. You can't just only put in the physical time, but you got to put in the mental time. And so as I'm developing the physical routines, I have to also develop the mental routines. And I think that's important to help each player with that is, okay, what do I go to in the big moments? If I focus on my routines and my rituals, I'm less focusing on what's happening in the moment. I've just lost this point. I go to my strings, or I go to the fence, or I do this and I reset and I come back. And I'm less focused on, okay, this point's to win the match. And I'm more focused on, this is how I prepare for each specific point. And if you get more focused on your rituals or your routines, the things that you do, both physically and mentally, I think those come together. It's just really, James, it goes down to discipline. Having the discipline to have certain things that you believe in that make you who you are.
So, and I know in coaching, there's a lot of time that's spent, a lot of pressure. I mean, you're almost like raising, like, these are your children, right? And I see, unfortunately, a lot of times in athletics, coaches lose their families. Maybe they grow distant with their wives, or they're not giving their children at home the time that they need. They don't have that connection. Are there suggestions you can give to coaches to help them maybe to be more balanced, to make sure they're actually providing what needs to be done at home to nurture these relationships as well?
I think that's such a huge point. And I think the most important thing I feel as coaches is to be your best, you have to be balanced, right? If I give everything that I have to my team, I know that I'm short-sighting my family. And so in the back of my mind, I'm not at my best because I know that I don't have the balance that I need. And so there becomes this internal struggle. And that internal struggle is eventually going to portray itself to my team. And I think, the important thing for me is these girls that I'm coaching come to me at a period of time in their life where they're developing who they're going to be for the rest of their life. And they're looking at not only myself, but my family for what a model of that looks like. And I can only model certain aspects of it. But what I do have is I have a wife who can model for them from a female perspective as well. And so, we as a family are very intentional about, we do this as a family. My wife and I talked about when I got into coaching, if we do this, we're going to do this as it's going to be a family approach. And so, we had our first day of class was Monday, and on Sunday night we had the team over, and my family is all there. My kids are there. Involving my family with my job to me is one of the perks of the job. If I don't involve my family in my job, then I am not going to have as much time with them. But just this morning, my son's 17 years old, and I got to get up in the morning and get him up to the tennis court, and I was able to hit with him before I did some work with my team. And he's around and he helps string the rackets for the team. He hits in with our team, and he's now a senior in high school. And when I started coaching at Oklahoma State, he was just starting kindergarten. So, my former players have seen him through that, and my current players see him grow up. And, if I can model for them a healthy family life, a healthy family balance, then that's one of the things that I can pass on to them. Does it mean that I get it perfect? Absolutely not. Does it mean that I've definitely short-sighted my own family for my career at times? I can admit to that for sure. But I think that's where you want to have kind of a checks and balances system. And, now the team, they're going to hold you accountable to the things that you talk about, right? And so, they'll ask certain questions of me, talk about different things. And, you saying you're about something and being about it is two different things. But when those two things come together, I think you get a lot more buy-in from your team as well. So if I say that family is important to me with our team, then I need to show them what family being important is in my personal life is as well. So I would just encourage all coaches that to be the best version of yourself, having as much balance as possible. And when those things get off balance, we all feel it. And I don't know if that is a great answer to your question or not, kind of go in the path that you wanted to, but for me, I think it's so important to have that balance. And so you got to be intentional, and you got to plan things. You got to plan moments with your wife and with your kids and those things. And I think that's healthy for the team to see it. It's healthy to have certain boundaries within your own program that allow you to have time with your family. And that may mean that my family eats dinner at the tennis courts. We've done that many times where, I get off the court and my wife's there in the locker room with food, and we sit there and we all eat dinner and, in our team lounge area. And as the girls are, kind of coming and going or doing whatever that they're doing around the team room or the facility, they see our team having dinner together, and they're welcome to join in and do that.
They do it at Wimbledon, breakfast at Wimbledon.
Exactly.
Why not lunch at Oklahoma State, dinner at Oklahoma State, right?
That's right. We keep referencing Ted Lasso. Biscuits with the boss, right? You might as well just make that happen.
Yeah. Well, Chris, we always end the show with 4 questions with 40 athletes, and these are 4 lightning round questions where, first thing that comes off the top of your head. So, number 1 is, what is the best life lesson sports has taught you?
Patience. I think we all want everything to happen immediately, and in sports, just success takes time. So I think that it's allowed me to be a more patient person.
Yeah. I heard the quote one time that patience is bitter but bears sweet fruit, and I was like, that comes back to me quite often. And I was like, yeah, it's hard to wait sometimes, but sometimes you're really glad you did it at the same time.
That's right. I'm gonna steal that, because nothing good, worthwhile happens overnight. The value and success is the joy of when you hold up that trophy. What your mind's racing to is all the hard work that you put in that allows you to hold it up, right? I mean, if they just hand it to you right away, has no value. But the memories that you make of the process is what's so valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's great. And number 2, if you could spend time with anyone you admire in sports, passed away or still alive, who would you pick and why would you pick them?
Dabo Sweeney. That's the guy I want to get in front of next. I'm telling John Gordon and Damon West, a couple of guys that I'm friends with, like, I mean, when's this going to happen? They both been to see him in the past week. I think the guy does the right way. He's bold in his vision and what he is. He lets his faith come across, which is important to him and me as well. And he just does it in a very genuine way, in my opinion. And to have the success he's had at Clemson is pretty remarkable, in my opinion.
Hey, by the way, if you meet him, you better BYOG, baby.
That's right.
You better bring your own guts if you're going to meet him. I'm telling you right now.
I'm ready.
You have to give a shout out when you mentioned John Gordon, but you mentioned Craig Rochelle, Life Church. That guy, he brings it. He really, I mean, he's solid. I love listening to him.
And he's a tennis guy. He grew up in the state of
Oklahoma. He did, actually. That is right. That is right.
He's a few years older than me, but where we've crossed paths a number of times. And he finished his career at Oklahoma City University, which I finished at Oklahoma Christian, and we were bitter rivals. But we didn't ever face each other. But yeah, I really appreciate the things that he has done. And, he had a series last year called Winning the War in Your Mind that he also wrote a book on. And we actually took some of that and used it for our team. And we showed some of our team some of those lessons because they were just good life skills. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest struggle that athletes have, and I see with my girls right now, is just winning the war in your mind. The biggest competitor that you're going to face is the person that you see in the mirror every day. And so trying to help our girls overcome that is so important. So I'm always looking and efforting to find information to give them tools to win that battle. And I thought he did a lot of great things that weren't just strictly faith-based. He had a lot of science behind it and a lot of things that he had studied. And so a lot of credit to him for that series, because that helped us a lot as well.
Yeah, he does a great job of bringing kind of Christianity, Christ teachings into real life applications. He really does. I mean, he's really gifted in that area. What is the best advice you've ever received from like the coach you played for or worked for? The best advice?
Oh, I think one of the things that I just reference came from our former athletic director, Mike Holder, who was a legendary golf coach before he became an athletic director at Oklahoma State. And he kind of just said, what you think about, what you dream about, what you talk about with your athletes, that's what's going to happen. And, I think that's so true. That's something I've learned about is, the athletes, they're going to pick up the things that you say. They're hanging on every word, whether you realize it or not. And if, you can say you have big dreams, big goals, big vision, but if you talk at a substandard level, that's ultimately what they're going to get. So, we've been talking about winning national championships here at Oklahoma State long before we were in that world where it was possible. But we talked about doing it and just being a champion, what that looks like, being a champion and talking about it, being about it. And I have to look inside myself and say there's times where, I haven't been as disciplined or done some of the things that I need to do. And so the team's going to pick up on that. So I would say that's the biggest advice is, what you talk about, what you dream about, what you think about on a daily basis, that's really going to reveal itself.
There it is, Chris. Think, dream, talk.
That's it.
Think, dream, talk. And you think about what you think about is what you become, what you get, right?
That's right.
But as you said, the words are so powerful. And the more studies they've done to show like the words you speak that are spoken, how powerful those words are and what it creates within people's lives. So you really got to watch how you speak and how you talk, not only for yourself, as you said, but for the people you're leading as well.
No question.
I love that. Let me ask you this. If you're recruiting Oklahoma State and you got your athletes and they could only have one character trait or life skill that you could choose that they would have, and these are your recruits you bring on campus to be part of your program, what would that one life skill character trait be?
Oh, that's a good one. There's like 3 that I'm bouncing in my head, which is going to be
go ahead and give me 1, 2, 3. Go ahead.
I would say one is discipline. Being able to have certain discipline. It's, I heard someone say discipline is sacrificing what you want now for what you want in the future. I think that is so important. Kind of goes back to some of the things we talked about here today. I think humility is something that is often lost in an individual sport and just, in our world today, just being humble and being a servant leader. I think that is so important. I always tell our players, like, when you're struggling and when you're having a hard time, go do something for somebody else. And doing something for somebody else, you're going to do more for yourself than you realize. And so I think having that humble servant leader type mentality, especially in an individual sport that is trying to come together as a team, that's so crucial for our athletes. So if you're disciplined and you're humble, I think that's a couple things that can really make a difference in our team. And I think the last thing I would say that is really important to me, that's like one of our number one expectations or characteristics in our program, is consistent. I tell our kids all the time that consistent people are the ones who have the most success, because it's easy to be good when we're up, but the challenge is being consistent on those difficult moments, those difficult days. And that goes a little bit back. I think those go hand in hand with discipline, but just being consistent, I think that is so important.
I love your discipline part, because one of the definitions I love of discipline that I've heard is like, discipline is the ability to give yourself a command and follow it. Like you command yourself, like the commander of you.
Yep.
Like in the military, they give you a command and you got to follow it. But can you be the commander of you and follow your commands?
Yeah.
I really think, like I said, discipline is so important.
I think that is. And, I think that's something that, got to look within my own self. Last year kind of got away with that a little bit. I was focused on everybody else, but my own self. And it's like, look, I've kind of slipped on some of these areas, and I've kind of become more disciplined in areas that I can be the example for the girls, because I'm so focused on solving all of their issues and doing all these things and helping them in these ways. But they need to see the reflection of it, in myself. And I think that's a big challenge that I have for myself this year.
Well, Chris, first of all, thank you for coming on the show today. Jim, we got a lot of things to unpack in this episode. And Chris, how can people learn more about the Oklahoma State tennis program and learn more about you as well? Where can they find you?
Man, I'm not sure how much that I give them on social media, whatever, but at Chris Young OSU is Twitter, at Coach Young, at Coach_Chris Young on Instagram. We kind of do some things there, but at Cowgirl Tennis, follow our team this year. Hopefully we'll have some successful moments that they can see, but we have a lot of great kids within our program. But I'm easily findable on the internet. I appreciate you, Jason, reaching out after I did something with Matt and Leslie, and I know you reached out after that. And I learned as much through these conversations as anybody. I've learned a lot from you and James today, and so I'm always intrigued by spending time with other people who are in the field of just helping others become better versions of themselves, especially in the world of athletics. So I'm more than happy to spend time. I learned a lot. I've had a lot of people invest in me, so I don't mind giving back to young coaches. So if there's anybody out there that feels like I can help them in some way, they can feel free to reach out to me at any point.
The great thing about it is if anybody's listening that knows Dabo Sweeney, you have Chris Young's contact information that you can basically send to Dabo and tell Dabo to get in contact with Chris and make that a reality.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to be real high on his list right now with the season starting, but man, I would.
You never know. He might be bringing in to speak to the team. Hey, real quick, can you show Jason how do you do the OSU cheer? How is that? How's it done?
I mean, you got the O, and then you got to come with the S. Yes. I think it's a little backwards now with the screen. I got to do it and then the U.
You like that?
You got the Go Pokes right here, you know.
So do you say something with it too? Is it OSU Go Pokes?
Just OSU. I mean, just a Go Pokes is a simple. It's covers Cowboys, Cowgirls. It's gender neutral. Go Pokes kind of solves it all. But at the fights, end of the fight song, we throw up the OSU. So any of that works for us, and we need to get you guys to a match sometime and have you in the stands.
It'd be a lot of fun, man.
We go down there. Get up and play in Lawrence at KU.
Yeah, we do. We actually were there last year. I don't know that we're going to be coming there anytime this year. I'm going to be up in Kansas City next weekend speaking at a USPTA convention for professional tennis coaches in the Kansas City area. So
awesome.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, Chris, thanks again, man, for your time. And we'll definitely be in touch soon for sure, man.
Sounds good, guys. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Coach. Take care.
Well, Jimmy, you heard it from one of the best tennis coaches in the country about the importance of prioritizing life skills. And, that's a message that we've been iterating the last, 2 or 3 years about why it's more than just a score. So, Jimmy, where can you find out more about our 40 Athletes program?
Well, people go to 40athletes.com and you can actually book a call, especially if you have teams, organizations. We can talk to you more about it. If you're a parent that wants to go through life skill training with your child, we have programs on there. You can do that as well. And we look forward to seeing your child kind of grow through the sports they play and become a better version of themselves by developing the life skills. And we talk about helping them succeed in and out of whatever sport they play. So,
well, Jim, thank you again for coming on today. And, we'll see you again next week as we bring on a person who helps you uncover unconscious biases, which would be interesting.
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
I need some of that. Thank you.
Hey, me too, right? That's why you bring these people on to help you out, right?
Exactly. Thanks, James.
Right. Thanks.